Thank you for having me. My deepest gratitude goes to Chairman John Rogers, President Frederick Kemp, the entire Atlantic Council for this distinguished recognition I am very proud of. And I thank Elon for the beautiful words that he had for me and for his precious genius for the era in which we live. I have put a lot of thought into how to present tonight's speech.
That is Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni accepting the 2024 Atlantic Council Global Citizen Award. And the award was presented by Elon Musk, Chief Engineer of SpaceX and CEO of Tesla. The award is usually given to world leaders, diplomats, philanthropists, and social and entertainment communities to celebrate the highest expression of global citizenship. Former honorees include Prime Minister of Canada Justin Trudeau and late former Prime Minister of Japan Shinzo Abe. You would think that it is just normal for Giorgia Meloni, the first female Prime Minister of Italy, to be presented the Global Citizen Award. But right after the gala, 8 organizations write an open letter saying that they are appalled by the decision to award Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni and Greek Prime Minister Kyriakos Mitsotakis the Global Citizen Awards. These organizations include Article 19 Europe, Access Now, Civil Liberties Union for Europe, European Centre for Press and Media Freedom, Electronic Frontier Foundation, European Federation of Journalists, Free Press Unlimited, and OBC Trans Europa. In the letter, these organizations found that the decision to award these 2 prime ministers risks normalizing Meloni and Mitsotakis' repressive policies and actions against media freedom and can further erode democratic principles and embolden authoritarian tendencies in both Italy and Greece and beyond. What have they done? What are their repressive policies and actions against media freedom? You're listening to The Divide. My name is Irish Xu.
I'm Barbora Bukovská. I'm Senior Director for Law and Policy at Article 19, which is an international freedom of expression organization working globally, including in Asia and Pacific region.
Barbora is a Czech-Slovak human rights attorney and activist. She's famous for her work on racial discrimination of Romani people in the Czech Republic and Slovakia. And since 2009, she has been a senior director for law and policy at Article 19, an international free speech organization. She has been leading on the development of all Article 19 policies and legal work covering a broad range of freedom of expression issues. And prior to Article 19, Barbora worked with various organizations on a range of human rights issues, including protection from discrimination, access to justice, deprivation of liberty, reproductive right, and community development. She also initiated about 50 cases at the European Court of Human Rights on these issues and has published a number of reports and articles on a broad range of human rights. And Barbora is the person who can tell me the state of press freedom in Italy at the moment.
If we are talking about a freedom of expression, state of freedom of expression in Italy, there are several reports, including by the European Commission, but also by civil society, such as Media Freedom Rapid Response, Freedom House, Liberties Media Freedom Report, as well as our own Article 19 report, that there has been deterioration of media freedom in Italy, and this materializes in several forms. So one is the attacks on journalists and targeting journalists with the Prime Minister Meloni and her party being directly involved. There is also deterioration of the media freedom in terms of public broadcasting, because there have been attempts to censor and influence their programming. And this even led to the resignation of the CEO of the public service broadcaster in Italy, RAI. And there have been concerns about the political interference in public media in Italy. So this showed that the situation of media freedom in the country is on a deteriorating path, and is very concerning for organizations like Article 19 and other press freedom organizations.
Is the deterioration of media freedom in Italy directly linked to the policies or actions taken by Giorgia Meloni?
So there has been, as I mentioned, there has been targeting of journalists who are critical of Meloni and her policies. They have been targeted by criminal and civil defamation suit. So, for example, in October last year, in October 2023, investigative journalist Roberto Saviano was actually convicted of criminal defamation in a lawsuit that was brought against him by Meloni. And then also this year, at the end of September, last month, Meloni's party, Fratelli d'Italia, brought a civil defamation suit against another journalist by Domani, a media outlet. His name is Giovanni Tiziano and Nelo Trocchia, over an article that investigated the party's donation to a fascist association. And Domani, this media outlet, is one of the key investigative outlets in Italy. It's very well known, renowned for impactful investigation into organized crime, into extremist groups, and they are also investigating the links between the far-right politicians in Italy and Russia. So highly respected media outlet, and these defamation suits are brought to silence the journalist and also to create a chilling effect on other journalists who are maybe thinking of investigating the human rights violations or some other concerns by Meloni and her party.
According to a Carnegie Endowment analysis, the law on criminal defamation is often linked to the suppression of political speech. In some countries, criminal defamation has been used not only by politicians against each other and journalists, but also by businesses against journalists, rivals, and media companies. The prevalence of using criminal defamation has led to calls for decriminalizing it, since one can also file civil suits for compensation and other relief from defamation. And according to a UNESCO report, in Western Europe and North America, criminal defamation remains in the statutes of 20 out of the 25 states, most retaining custodial sanctions. Between 2003 and 2018, 5 countries abolished criminal defamation and insult laws, and another partially repealed one. Against this scenario, it is advised that states should repeal criminal defamation laws and replace them with appropriate civil defamation legislations in line with international standards.
So Italy has a criminal defamation law. It has criminal defamation on its books, and Article 19 as well as other organizations have been campaigning for decriminalization and removal of these provisions. Unfortunately, it hasn't happened. And there have been also the decision of the Italian Constitutional Court against these provisions, numerous cases at the European Court. So this reform is long overdue, and at the moment, unfortunately, there is no proposal to decriminalize it. There is also criminal defamation on the books in other countries in Europe, including in the European Union, which is highly problematic. And it actually goes against growing international standards that the criminal defamation is disproportionate limitations on the freedom of expression and should be removed from the legislation and should be ceased to exist. So unfortunately, Italy is not one of the countries that is on this path.
So what happened to the journalists who have been targeted by the Italian government's criminal defamation suits?
So Saviano, this Roberto Saviano, this very well-known, coveted investigative journalist. The case was brought against him in November 2021, before Meloni became the Prime Minister. and it accused him of aggravated criminal defamation due to his criticism of Meloni's stance against migrants. So Meloni has been kind of like, speaking at the migrant. She made this interview in a television program, and then he covered a death of 6-month-old baby from Guinea, who was one of the migrants who drowned on the Mediterranean Sea when the Italian authorities are delaying the rescue efforts. So he wrote this article, and then the prosecutor asked for a fine of 10,000 euros for the criminal charge. So not a criminal sentence, but so not an imprisonment, but still the criminal case, meaning that he has a criminal record. And there was the order of a fine of 1,000 euro and 2,600 euro in legal expenses of the prosecutor. So basically he was sentenced to de facto 3,600 euros of fine and now has a criminal record. So the fact that he didn't go to prison doesn't diminish the seriousness of these criminal defamation charges and the fact that this is going through a legal system and has a sort of stain on his criminal record.
According to the European Commission's annual Rule of Law report, there has been under the watch of Meloni a rapid deterioration in media freedom in Italy, with Meloni and her party directly involved. Besides the case of Roberto Saviano, almost every member of the current Italian government has sued a journalist.
So first of all, there is a chilling effect. So if the powerful individuals and powerful political parties are bringing cases against journalists for their legitimate investigating work and for basically doing their job, it creates chilling effect on freedom of expression. It sends message to media community and to other critical voices in society that this kind of criticism is not tolerated. So it has a broader impact beyond this particular case. But for the particular case, we also call this kind of cases SLAP, or strategic litigation against public participation, where the objective of these cases is not only, pursue civil remedies or some sort of get the journalist pay compensations, but also to create a burden on a journalist to go through this legal procedure. So to invest time and resources in defense and sometimes quite significant time and resources in terms of paying for lawyers and other costs related to the case. So this type of civil defamation cases have a chilling effect on journalistic community, but also on this particular journalist who might need to be distracted or might need to invest considerable time and energy in defending those cases rather than doing the journalistic work.
So how do we stop, or what should be done to stop state actors from targeting journalists?
So first of all, there needs to be legal reform, because this criminal defamation is happening because there is a criminal defamation law. There are provisions in the penal code which allow for criminal defamation. So on one hand, there needs to be the criminalization of defamation, full decriminalization. The provision that enable this prosecution must go. But this also needs to go hand in hand with the reform of civil defamation law to prevent the chilling effect I was describing previously. And we want reforms such as cap on damages, but also what we call anti-SLAP protections. So anti-SLAP protections are the legal means which allow early dismissal of cases where the intent of the case is to harass a journalist. So allowing courts to early dismiss them, but also allowing victims of the SLAPs, in this case journalists, to seek compensations for the time and resources they had to put into defending themselves. So legal protection first. The second is also the need of sort of like a mindset and recognition of the importance of the press freedom. Because public officials, including prime ministers or presidents and our powerful figures in the society, need to realize that by engaging in public life and assuming these public positions and governmental position, they need to sustain higher level of criticism than ordinary citizens by the way of their position. So recognizing the importance of press and transparency and accountability is also important, and also creating what we call enabling environment in the society where criticism is not seen as an attack, but as a healthy part of a democratic society.
So after Barbora provides the roadmap for change, I asked her if it is about politicians having thicker skins to criticisms.
It's not a thicker skin because the thicker skin is not how I would define it, because you are holding this job as a public service. It's not some sort of an award or something where you would be shunned from criticism. This is a public function which comes with accountability and the need for accountability. It's not a thicker skin. It's recognizing that this post is held for the electorate and being accountable to the electorate. So that's why the international standards require the tolerance to this exposure.
So have Meloni and her government respond to any of these criticisms from the civil society and journalist organizations?
They haven't responded to our criticism, and quite dangerously, they recently were awarded with quite prestigious award by Atlantic Council, that is this think tank, American think tank, transatlantic think tank. They got a Global Citizen Award, so that's quite dangerous precedent, because it looks like they are being awarded for what they do instead of being accountable to the public. So they haven't responded to our criticism in any way, and they actually haven't responded to our calls and recommendations to reform the law and protect journalists and media in the country.
But she did respond to the European Commission's annual Rule of Law report, which expressed concerns about press freedom in Italy and the independence of its public broadcaster. After the publication of the report, Meloni sent a letter to von der Leyen, the European Commission president. She says these are clumsy and specious attacks that can only have an impact in the desolate context of the recurrent use of fake news that increasingly pollutes the debates in Europe. She adds, it is unfortunate that not even the Commission's report on the rule of law, and in particular on freedom of information on public service broadcasting, has been spared by professionals of disinformation and mystification. It seems obvious that the Italian government is in no rush to reform the criminal defamation law.
Unfortunately, there is no indication that this legislation is in planning. There are a number of proposals in Italy to reform defamation. However, they don't go the way that Article 19 and others recommended, quite opposite. It doesn't propose decriminalize defamation, and in fact it also proposes to change the sanctions, increase the fines for defamation cases. So unfortunately, there are not any plans in this direction.
Thank you for listening. This episode of The Divide is produced by Radio Taiwan International.